What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we have. Oprah Winfrey. Welcome to Business in the Black, the podcast where ideas become plans, plans become actionable items, and actionable items become results. Business in the Black is the go-to podcast for aspiring and established Black entrepreneurs looking to build, grow, and sustain successful businesses. Each episode dives into the inspiring journeys of Black-owned businesses, highlighting their triumphs, challenges, and lessons learned. Whether you're thinking about taking the leap into entrepreneurship or you're already running a business, we provide expert advice on essential topics like funding, marketing, operations, and scaling. Our mission is to empower and uplift the Black business community by sharing knowledge, resources, and success stories. Tune in each week for motivation, practical strategies, and a network of support to help you turn your vision into reality and amplify Black excellence in business. I am your host, Brandon D. Morgan, and we look forward to jumping right in. Last week, we talked about the what and why. This week, we're talking about the who and why. I'm the who. I'm your host. My name again is Brandon D. Morgan. You'll notice that I always put the D there because I've just always had it there when it comes to anything professional. It's also why the BDM experience, the D is there. The BDM Enterprises, the D is there. I mean, it's just my middle name is really, really important to me. I like it. Brandon DeJuan Morgan. I'm 37 years old. I'm a native of Dadeville, Alabama. Shout out to Dadeville. Shout out to Alabama. And now I am a resident of Atlanta, Georgia. You know, big ups to Atlanta. Love it here. And like I say, just jumping right in, I started singing when I was 2 years old. Singing in church, you know, I was not like in a church choir at first. I was like singing solos. And then it moved from there. And by the time I turned 5, I was on the Apollo Theater, amateur night at the Apollo, not to be confused with Apollo Kids. But amateur night, I won 3 times. And if you win 3 times at amateur night, you have to go to Showtime at the Apollo. But you had to be 18 to get on Showtime. So I was 5. So that was the end of that. And then at 6, I have to remember these things. At 6, I started playing piano. Self-taught, you know, learned to just kind of look at a piano and be like, okay, this sounds good. This doesn't, you know, do this. Then, you know, figure out what to do with this hand. Just kind of all start coming together. And then by 8, I was playing in different churches. Now, I say I was doing all these things, but we all know that it's definitely a gift from God. So, you know, shout out to the Lord because, you know, without him, nothing is possible. With him, all things are possible. And so we moved on. I, you know, planned for different churches or what have you. And then at 8 years old, again, playing for churches, but at 8 years old, I also, you've heard of probably The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Probably not, because it never came out. It was Tom and Huck. Tom and Huck with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I was in the movie when it was called The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Well, they invited us to the premiere, all the red carpet, all the things, you know, and you get to the premiere and you start watching the movie, and I'm supposed to be Jimbo, you know, with the fence and all that stuff. And the scene comes up and it's not me. So I'm like, wait, what's this? Well, unbeknownst to me, you know, I'm 8, so I didn't know what that really meant, but I knew I wasn't in the movie. And so my part had been cut. Well, when we walked out of the movie theater, there were, you know, kids crying and people crying because, you know, a lot of people have told a lot of people, hey, I'm going to be in this movie. They've got their schoolmates going to watch it, you know, their coworkers, all the things. And it just didn't hit me like that. You know, my brain, you know, straight from the heavens, you know, I was told, you know, it'll be all right. There'll be other movies. So there I am at 8 years old, going around kind of patting people on the back. It's going to be okay. You know, there'll be other movies. I don't know. It was just a thing. And then, sure enough, in 1997, I was cast in a movie called Flash. Flash was a Disney movie about a horse. You can find it on YouTube. Some of you may have like a VHS or a DVD or something with it on it, but I know it's on YouTube. But it aired on ABC, the network. So, great experience there. I was acting, and the line that people are always trying to get me to repeat are, how much you selling them for? And then I say $500. So, that was a thing. And then 1998, the Ruby Bridges story. If you've never heard of the Ruby Bridges story, please go look it up on Disney Plus. It's about the little girl who integrated the schools in New Orleans. And so, great movie, great educational time for you, your family, your kids, what have you. I sang in that movie. And then Why Did Fools Fall in Love is a movie about Frankie Lyman and the teenagers. You got Lorenz Tate, you've got Leela Rashawn, you've got Halle Berry, you've got Vivica Fox, Little Richard, Ben Vereen, all these people in that movie or what have you. And so, life went on. I was like, okay, cool. This is what I'm doing now. In that time, you also get commercials on McDonald's, BP Gas, Royal Sausage. People used to love that one because it was like, they said something, 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 Royal Sausage. And then there was a hot dog bun in my hand with the Royal Sausage in it. And, I'm supposed to be eating it. And I say, it tastes good. All of that. The McWane Science Center was a huge science center back, and still a thing, but I'm not advertising for it. And then Kool-Aid, to name a few. There's some others, but we're gonna keep on going past that. Talk shows. I was on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. Some of you may know it as Regis and Kelly, or Kelly and whoever she's with now, or whatever is going on with the show. But Regis and Kathy Lee was the beginning. Years after they had been on, I was on that show singing. Sally Jesse Raphael was another show back then. You got to I don't know, you had to be like, probably your mother and your grandmother and your great-grandmama know about Sally, depending on what age group you're falling in. We talked about age groups last week, so perhaps, hey, you might be really with it, remembering Sally. And then the Donnie and Marie Osmond show, I was on that show as well. And then the funny thing about the Donnie and Marie Osmond show, I sang Oh Happy Day on that show. I sang Who's Loving You by Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. But then I also sang Oh Happy Day. And it was like, me, Donnie and Marie, and this guy named Joe Morton. So, oh, happy day, oh, happy day, oh, happy day. So we just singing and all this kind of stuff. And so, people were so enamored that I was singing with Joe Morton. I didn't know who Joe Morton was. Okay. Fast forward to Scandal comes out. And everybody's enamored with Papa Pope. Still meant nothing to me. I liked him. Cool. All right. Keep watching. And then I started connecting. Wait. Joe Morton and Papa Pope are the same person. Light bulb. Because I was like, oh, wait, I met him. Oh, wait, we sang on stage together. Way over my head. But in any case, so that's a funny story from Donnie and Marie Osmond. Been on the Today Show. I was a finalist in 2003 on America's Most Talented Kid. It was a NBC show. And then I kind of realized, Brandon, you're like, okay, it's time to slow down. You got to go to high school. You got to do some stuff. You got to get some, I guess, roots, if you will. I don't know. I had roots because I had, family, friends, and all that. But something, it just didn't, I needed to, change directions. And you'll see that as a common theme for my life, changing directions. In 2006, I was an honors graduate at Dadeville High School. And then in 2010, I graduated from Auburn University, serving as the university's first black president of the Student Alumni Association. And then in 2012, I graduated from the University of Denver. My undergrad degree is in radio, television, and film. 15 years later, I'm deciding to, kind of get back into that world. Never worked in it before, for real. And then my master's degree is in organizational and professional communication with a minor in PR and marketing. Again, kind of sliding back into it. So, you never know when you're going to pop back into your degree field. During my time at Auburn, I worked in the office of the president and the board of trustees office, as well as a couple other offices as a student leader around campus. So it led me right into what you could call my second career, higher education. Love higher education, fell in love with higher education. It is like one of the greatest gifts to mankind, if you will. I mean, I say that because I was a recruiter. But I moved to Southern Union State Community College and became a recruiter advisor turned coordinator of recruitment and academic advising. And Southern Union taught me a lot. Like, it taught me what I really valued in life. I will say that there were conversations that I had with students, and it's like, being able to have this personal touch, like it really is really a thing for me. I remember a couple of situations in particular. There were some students who graduated and they would come back and I would see them around or what have you, and they'd be like, when I talked to you, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And you really helped me to, get things in order and look at it like, okay, I don't have a plan right now, but when you leave this office, you're going to have a plan. And that was the type of, advising that I really tried to do. Even in recruitment, it was more of like, hey, if you don't know what you're going to do, then having a plan to go to college is better than no plan at all. In addition to that, I had students who would come in and they would say, nobody ever believed in me before. Nobody ever told me that I could, achieve this and achieve that. So, me being a person who, I want to help you to realize and be your best self. I just really, that's something that I really, truly enjoy. Like, I want to be a part of the journey. I want to be somebody who you trust enough to tell your journey to, so that any access or any avenue that I have that I can, steer you towards or, connect you with this person or that person, that's something that really gives me joy. So at Southern Union, I was there. I did that, lots of different things in addition to just academic advising and recruiting. After Southern Union, I was the director of veterinary admissions and recruitment at Tuskegee University. It's a great time. And my goal for Tuskegee, if you will, was to make sure that, hey, I carried that same energy of making a difference, making sure that, hey, you don't leave it the same way you found it and all that sort of thing. So I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is a great institution, but does everybody even know it? It's kind of like, you know what you know, and then it's like, oh yeah, I didn't know this or I didn't know that. So I found out so many wonderful things while I was working at Tuskegee. The types of alums that had made these enormous contributions to veterinary medicine and other scientific fields by way of veterinary medicine, that I felt like it was, as the director of admissions, hey, I know admissions, so that's easy. That's I can do that in my sleep. But really making sure that people understood, the recruitment aspect of how to get to Tuskegee and why you should choose Tuskegee. In addition to that, Tuskegee really helped me to realize, Brandon, you can learn absolutely anything. I had to learn veterinary medicine. I had to know the differences in the tracks that you could take in veterinary medicine after, getting your degree. I had to understand the pathways and the sciences behind, coming into the college, and why it was important to take certain courses in your undergraduate career, and why some, why they may look pretty, those are not the best to prepare you for veterinary medical school. So there was a lot of learning that I had to do, but I had to also be confident enough to speak to the doctors of veterinary medicine. And if you've never spoken to a doctor of veterinary medicine, they typically know their stuff. So if you are talking something that is not, in line with what it is, they're going to know it. Teaser. We're going to have some doctors of veterinary medicine to come on the show later on. Some that were, again, very instrumental in my time at Tuskegee. And so I look forward to just having those conversations again. But, Tuskegee was a great place. But I realized, okay, it's time for another change, because, once you've, your time is up somewhere, it's time to keep moving. And then I realized that, it's time to, make another shift. Like I say, Life is full of transitions. And so before I transition to Atlanta, let me talk a little bit about some of the memberships that I was a part of while I was in the Lee County area. I graduated from Leadership Lee County. I graduated from Opelika's Top 20 Under 40. I was inducted into the Opelika Rotary Club and Rotary International. And, I served on a lot of boards. I served on the board for 20 Under 40. I served on the board for Opelika Rotary Club, the Opelika Chamber of Commerce, and the East Alabama Community Foundation. During this time, I also pledged the greatest fraternity known to man, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I was initiated at the new Iota chapter and served on several committees and executive boards there, as well as the Alabama State board. I served on a couple of positions with different committees at the state level. Then I moved to Atlanta, and so moving to Atlanta, I moved into consulting. And when I was in consulting, I, consulted on a myriad of things. Anything that I was, previously doing in a job, I had my consulting firm and really like working through and going into different businesses, helping them to organize themselves, to communicate more effectively. You name it. It was just like, people were like, oh, we're having this issue. Oh, I can figure that out. Again, I learned a lot. So I'm like, I can do this. So just kind of putting myself in different spaces. And all of that worked really well until 2020 and the pandemic. And, you couldn't necessarily go into corporations anymore. People were trying to learn to work more remotely. And, just things changed for me as a consultant. And then I moved into the tech field. So when I moved into the tech field, I worked in the ESG space, more of the educational technology space, and in lots of different positions, director of implementation, director of operations, director of this, that, and the other. And then I moved into the healthcare tech field because the SaaS tech field was, having some issues as it relates to layoffs and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's go do something else. I moved into, again, healthcare tech. And in healthcare tech, I was initially director of underwriting operations. Then I moved to director of operations. Then I moved to director of implementation. And so, lots of different transitions. But as you can see, life kept moving and I kept pivoting. And, you're probably wondering, well, how did you get into business? Well, back in 2020, one of my really good friends, her name is Jamila Custer. You'll meet her later on. She has her own business. So, of course, she's coming to be a guest on the podcast. But in any case, she, hit me up one day and she was like, you really need to brand yourself. You need to, coin all of this stuff that you do. And so I was like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, well, B Speaks. Like, you're a public speaking instructor. So I didn't talk about that. But back when I was at Southern Union, I was also an adjunct public speaking instructor. So B Speaks, I speech coach, trying to help people to be like, okay, hey, when you do this is what you need to do. You need to be not so monotone, make sure you're using your nonverbals, make sure you're doing, all of those things. B Motivates. I also am a motivational speaker. So going to different places and speaking to large groups and all the things. And then B Trains. So B Trains was, again, what I talked about a little earlier when we were talking about the consulting business. So she really built that, for me, as a prototype to show you, okay, this is what you can start to market yourself as. So, that was like the first iteration back in 2020. And then in 2021, I got my LLC for the BDM Enterprises because I thought, well, this could grow, it could be something bigger. And then, things kept moving, yada, yada, yada. Again, the whole time I'm working other jobs. And then the big drop happened. So you're trying to figure out, well, what brought all of this on? My last job, 6 words changed it all. 6 words. And I was in this conversation after about the 3rd title change, of progressive movement and, just, fixing one thing in one space, then saying, okay, we need you to come do this. Okay, we need you to come do that. Da, 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 da. And In that last change, there was a conversation and you wanted me to have technically 2 jobs in one. And I just couldn't see where that made sense. You know, you'll learn that I'm a pretty sensible and logical person. But in any case, the conversation went a little like this. I said, well, these are 2 jobs. So if you want me to do both, then you need to up my money. Well, the person said to me 6 words. You just have to prove yourself. You just have to prove yourself to me. This person happened to be younger than me and they were in this position and all the things. And anybody who knows me, and this person should have known that that was going to set me off. But in any case, it did not end well, because what I said was, prove myself. I said, I don't have to prove myself to anybody. And I hope that you have the same confidence. I mean, if you know what you know, proving yourself for people is insane, because if you can cook, you can cook. I mean, if you can take pictures, you can take pictures. Proving yourself is the wrong thing. I might, what you're cooking might not be, aligned with my taste buds, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, somebody believes, even if it's just you, that you can cook. So proving yourself was the wrong thing to say to me, because my response was, I don't have to prove myself to anybody. I said, but let me tell you, if you do need proof, you can go look at my resume. You can go look at all the things that I've done before I got here. Proof. Or better yet, you can look at the things that I've done since I've been here. Proof. So, of course, conversation went silent because you don't know what to say now except for, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's too late, because you've already said what you said. Now, the founder, who's still living, he came and, I just apologized and what can we do and da-da-da-da. Nothing, don't worry about it. Because again, the statement was made, that energy, I don't need that. But I do appreciate you coming and, trying to smooth it over, blah, blah, blah. Just, and long story short, it was at that moment that I realized, Brandon, you don't have to do this anymore. You can, you can go on, and making sure that, again, I was able to go on, contractually, everything worked out well. We're, grateful and we're really excited about that. But, I needed to make sure that I was being led. And, so I attend the Dream Center Church of Atlanta. So Bishop Murphy, William Murphy, I'm using his name because he said it, so I want to give him his credit. But he said, everything that you need to start your business, you already have. And then he said, everyone that you need, you already know. And so I started to build my team from that. I started to, listen to the voice of the Lord. Now, again, you've probably heard a couple of times during this, if, hearing about the Lord Jesus Christ makes you uncomfortable, I can't talk a long time without him coming up. So he's coming at some point. But in any case, I started to listen to his voice to help me to say, okay, this is where I need to be going with this. This is what I need to be doing. And then, the people just started coming to my mind, and they were gracious enough to say, yep, I'll help. Yep, I'll do this. Yep, I'll do that. Just let me know. Just let me know this. And so it all just started to come together. And the podcast is the first part of what I am launching in this new phase of the BDM Enterprises. And so you're here a part of this. You're here to help me to realize this vision that hopefully will help all of us as a collective. As a reminder, Business in the Black is the go-to podcast for aspiring and established Black entrepreneurs looking to build, grow, and sustain successful businesses. Each episode that this podcast has is going to dive into the inspiring journeys of Black-owned businesses, highlighting the triumphs, challenges, and lessons learned. What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we have. Oprah Winfrey. Business in the Black is here for you. Business in the Black wants you to be a part of this journey. Business in the Black will be here for you so that you can soak in all the knowledge from all of the entrepreneurs who will come here on this particular podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Business in the Black, TikTok at Business in the Black, Bluesky at Business in the Black, Instagram at Business in the Black Pod, P-O-D. Our YouTube channel is all one word, Business in the Black Pod. Spotify, Business in the Black. Apple, Business in the Black. Once again, I am your host, Brandon D. Morgan, and it has been an awesome pleasure talking with you today, and we hope that you join us again next week. Thank you.